Good evening and welcome to the Florida Pulse, a virtual roundtable with the USA Today Network's opinion leaders here in Florida. I am Isadora Rangel. I am the engagement editor at Florida Today, which covers Brevard County, also known as Florida's Space Coast. The purpose of today's live stream is to talk about a very, very important topic going on in Florida, in the nation, and probably the world, which is, should we be reopening schools during the COVID-19 pandemic? And with me today, I have three of my colleagues who write opinion for the USA Today Network, and we're going to be debating whether it's a good idea to reopen schools, how each individual district across the state of Florida is doing that. After all, we have very independent districts who have come up with their own plans. By the way, the USA Today Network in Florida covers a great portion of our state. We could only have 4 of us with us today because obviously there will be too many of us, but we are 17 properties across Florida, ranging from Palm Beach all the way to Jacksonville, and on the West Coast we have Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota, as well as North Florida as well, in Tallahassee, Pensacola. I cannot think of all the places that we are at, but if you're watching us, it's because we are in your community. But without further ado, let me introduce my colleagues this evening. I'm going to start with Gil Smart. He is a columnist at Treasure Coast Newspapers, and he lives in Martin County. Hi, Gil.
How you doing, Isadora? Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody.
Nice hey there.
And we also have Brent Batten. He is a columnist at the Naples Daily News on the other side of the state. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, Rick Christie is the editorial page editor at the Palm Beach Post. Hi, Rick.
Hey, how you doing?
And again, I'm Isadora in Brevard County. So I want to start with kind of something that I think the entire country and the entire state has been debating for the past couple of months, whether is it a good idea to be reopening schools during this pandemic? And Rick, you're in a part of the state that that is the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's start with you. What is your feeling? Is it a good idea in Palm Beach County? And you can also explain what you guys are doing down there.
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, yeah, I think as long as we're doing things safely and by steps. Now, when you say about reopening schools, I think people need to understand we're talking about it has to be explained here that we in Palm Beach County this week reopened our schools only to virtual learning, not in classroom or in person. So, and we're kind of taking our time with that and everything to make sure that we can do that correctly, because as you said, we're one of the hot spots in Florida and have had our issues with coronavirus infections as well as deaths. So we need to take our time with this compared to probably 64 of the 67 counties in the state and school districts in the state. So like I said, right now, we just this week on Monday started virtual classes. And right now, our expectation is that we will begin in-person classes somewhere around September 24th, maybe September 28th. And the whole idea of that is to offer all of our parents of our 180,000 or so kids a choice of in-person or virtual learning. And the expectation is obviously that a whole lot of parents will want to take advantage of the classroom learning. And that will, I think that's when the rubber will really hit the road for us. I think right now, with the virtual learning, we're just dealing with the technology and everything like that. And this is allowing us to kind of get a good plan together for how we're going to open up around, I'm going to say about 183 campuses or something like that, elementary, middle and high schools in the county. So that's going to be it's going to be kind of a heavy lift, but we need the way we're doing it now is the best way to do it. You know, start off virtual and then see if we can get to where we need to be on September 28th, because certainly a lot of parents, there are a lot of parents who want their kids back in classrooms, but of course there are going to be a number of parents who are still concerned about the coronavirus spread and not want to do that either. So right now I have to say that we're pretty much going about it the right way. That's making us comfortable. And want to add real quick, if I can, that folks can go ahead and ask us questions and stuff too, right? By posting
Yeah.
questions or something like that.
And parents, let us know what you're doing with your kids. Are you sending them back to brick and mortar? Are you keeping them at home? Let us know what your experience has been so far. And we'll get back to you, Rick. But I want to move up north a little bit to Martin County, which is if you're not familiar with Martin County, I wasn't until I had to move there for a job, is the Stewart area. It is a small county, but it is very close to South Florida. And we have seen more cases in Martin County than in Brevard, for example, which is more in the Central Florida area. But Martin County has reopened schools for maybe a couple of weeks now. Gil, I mean, what have you observed? Because you've been kind of the guinea pig, I think. And what can you tell us here in Brevard? We just reopened on the 24th. So we're starting to see, we already had one school closed, one elementary school. But tell us, what have you learned? What are the lessons? And you're muted.
Thank you. Martin County was one of the first districts in the state to reopen. They reopened August 11th after the teachers union in the district could not come to an agreement to push back the opening date. Treasure Coast newspapers, for which I'm a columnist, also covers St. Lucie and Indian River counties. Both of those county school districts were able to reach an accord with the teachers union. They opened both of those districts on August 24th. So yeah, Martin County, and I have two kids in the Martin County School District. I have an 8th grade daughter. I have a 5th grade son. My 5th grade son is back on campus. My 8th grade daughter is doing it from home, remote learning. What Martin County learned and what other school districts around the state are going to learn is that you're going to have scares. You're going to have situations where kids come into school showing symptoms, where kids come into school and say, yeah, I've got a relative at home who's been diagnosed, who's tested positive for the virus. You're going to have kids who show up and they're coughing, who show up with fevers, that sort of thing. In Martin County, since the schools started, since August 11, 411 students have already been quarantined and sent home for a period of 2 weeks because they were either suspected of having the virus. The term is presumed positive. They were presumed positive either because they showed symptoms, tested positive, or someone at home had tested positive. Now, sounds terrible. There have been maybe a dozen incidents where 26 kids in this class have been sent home, plus a couple teachers. 90 kids in this class, 10 kids in that class. But the upshot of that is most of those kids are back on campus. None of them, according to the Department of Health and the school district, have subsequently tested positive for the virus. So what has happened in Martin County, and then what has begun to happen in St. Lucie and Indian River counties, is that you have kids who are identified as having been exposed to the virus, potentially, that sort of thing. They'll be sent home. The kids they came into contact with will be sent home. The teachers in those classes will be sent home. There's going to be cases, most likely, where teachers actually do come down with the virus. And there's going to be cases, perhaps, throughout the state where schools are going to wind up being, classrooms are going to be wind up closed. Kids are going to have to do it from home for the duration. Maybe entire schools will be closed, but we've not seen that yet in Martin County. What we've seen in Martin County, again, one of the first districts in the state to go back, is an abundance of caution. I think they're doing it right. I think they're taking this very, very seriously. But we have not, the worst case scenario has not come to pass. That doesn't mean that it still, couldn't. Of course it could. But for right now, what's happening here is that we're seeing a lot of kids sent home as being potentially exposed. And those kids have begun arriving back on campus because they've gone the 2-week quarantine period without showing symptoms, without coming down for the virus. So it gets to be a bit of a shuttle service situation where they're on campus, they're off campus, they're back home. But in the meantime, just today, we got an email from the district saying that as it's been, we're in the midst of our 4th week going back, they are beginning to take applications from parents whose kids are currently at home who want to transition back to campus. That's probably what we're going to do with my daughter. I spoke to my daughter about her situation earlier today. Again, she's in 8th grade. She's been doing it from home, remote learning. She wants to go back to school. She wants to be back with her friends. We are probably going to do that. We're probably going to fill out that paperwork and get her there as soon as we can. There are a lot of parents who are reluctant to do that, who may keep their kids at home the entire year. There's a lot of parents who believe their kids need the in-person instruction. They need the social aspect of school that you really can't get online. There's a broad spectrum of what parents need and want for their kids out there. So in a lot of ways, Governor DeSantis and Education Commissioner Corcoran have taken a lot of heat for their decision to try to get kids back in the classroom. There's a lot of people out there who want their kids back in the classroom.
Isadora, you're muted.
Isadora. We're going to have to watch this all night long for you.
I was actually asking Brent what's happening on the West Coast in Collier and Lee counties. What have you seen so far there?
Collier and Lee counties opened their physical schools and their virtual schools on Monday, so I just had a couple of days experience, and it's really too early to comment about what the results are. Gil's got a much better perspective with 4 weeks under their belt. As to the original question, is it a good idea or is it a bad idea? If the only consideration at play were stopping the spread of the coronavirus, then it would be an easy call. Of course, it would be a bad idea to open schools if that were the only consideration at play. But there are other considerations I think we have to consider as well. What's it cost when a kid misses out on months and months of education? What happens to kids that don't learn well online, that aren't good at the virtual learning, that need that classroom environment, need the interaction with teachers, need the interaction with peers to survive? What about the parents who can't afford to stay home with their younger children while they go to school virtually? Those are considerations we have to take into mind too. And given all that, I think that yes, physical schools do need to open. Should they open this week, next week? Should they have opened 2 weeks ago? I won't pretend to have the exact answer to that, but yes, I do believe we need to make the physical school option available for students who need to learn that way. My student did not fare well in the spring when they switched entirely to online learning. I realized that was sort of a program that was thrown together at the last minute out of necessity, and perhaps the virtual experience might be different or better now, perhaps. But I just get the sense from knowing my boy the way that I know him that he would fare much better in a classroom, and that's really where he needs to be to get the full benefit of his education. So those considerations have to be taken into account too. It's easy to see the results of X number of students come down with the virus, or X number of teachers, and that's an easy thing to quantify. But how do you quantify months of missed education? How do you quantify parents losing jobs because they can't make the hours because they have to be home with their kids? And those are difficult questions that we're all faced with right now. And I don't pretend there's an easy answer, but I'm confident that opening schools physically is the right thing to do.
That, if I can step in real quick, that's an important point. I'm not sure if this has been the case in all districts around Florida, but in our local school districts here on the Treasure Coast, the districts all polled parents. They sent out a questionnaire asking them if they wanted their kids back on campus or they wanted their kids to do it from home. In each of the 3 school districts, more than 50%, and in the Martin County School District, 61% either said, we want our kids back in school, or they did not respond, and the default choice was sending the kids back to school. So Brent is absolutely correct. There's a ton of parents out there who, frankly, if the kids have to stay home, they can't work. They're going to miss hours at work. They're going to maybe lose jobs. The family's going to take an economic hit. I've had people say to me, well, the schools shouldn't be daycare centers. Well, sorry to say, to an extent, they play that role in our society. They have played that role in our society. And when you abruptly change that, you throw millions of families into turmoil. So again, parents, what's good about the way this is being done is that parents who want to keep their kids home, parents who believe that their kids are safer at home and who do not believe the public schools are safe, can select that option. And I fully expect that option is going to be available to them for the remainder of this school year. Regardless of what happens, virus infections are trending down in our community today. And again, how much do we trust the numbers out of the state? But today, the state reported a grand total of 17 new cases in our 3 Treasure Coast counties. The numbers have been trending downward, okay? And the whole idea was, well, we'll send, there was teachers in Martin County protested going back to school, and one of the protest signs says, school online until COVID declines. COVID appears to be declining, based on these numbers that we're seeing from the state. So, but again, if you don't believe that, if you think your kids are at risk, you have the option of keeping them at home. And it's good to have that option. And that option should be retained for the remainder of this year for parents who frankly don't want to send their kids back regardless of what the numbers say. And I think there will be. I don't see local school districts rushing anybody back to campus.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, Gil, kind of where I am. In the beginning, I would say maybe a month ago, I was thinking there's no way we can be reopening schools. This is the dumbest idea ever. But then I started to hear, and Brent said something that really spoke to me, is you started to hear from the parents, like the single mothers and the women who need to be out working. And then what do you do? How do you help those children? And not even mentioning the learning gap, because I think whether a student succeeds at home depends a lot on the parents and the kind of environment that they have. Do they have a quiet place where they can study? Do they have a desk? All of those things make a big difference. And I've learned that just from working from home, and I'm not a teenager or a child in elementary school. So yeah, I think in Brevard County, we're quite doing a decent job. Like I said, we opened on August 24th. We already had one elementary school close and a classroom also closed in a different school. And Florida Today has just reported that 31 schools do not have a nurse on staff. And nurses are supposed to be the liaison between the school and the Department of Health. But having said all that, I think, what do you do? How do you explain to parents that know your child would not be given the same opportunity? And I like the idea of having parents, but my next question is about teachers. Teachers don't really have that option, right? To say, I'm not going back to school. In Brevard County, for example, they can take a 1-year unpaid leave, which I'm not sure is a good idea. But what have you heard? What are your districts doing to make sure that teachers feel comfortable, or if they have any pre-existing conditions, can they just stay home?
Well, for us right now, that's one of the big arguments. Whereas the teachers union has accused the school district of lying to them, all this time as they were putting together a plan to reopen schools, that the district had kept giving them quote unquote assurances, that teachers would be able to, that at-risk teachers particularly would have the opportunity to teach virtual classes rather than be in the classroom. Whereas the district now is saying that, well, yeah, you can do this paid leave thing and see how that works out. So that's a pretty big fight right now. And for us, we come down on the side of the teachers on this, that if you have a teacher who, a dedicated teacher who has diabetes or COPD, which are two of the underlying conditions that usually end up with somebody dying if they do get COVID-19, that person should be allowed to have the opportunity anyway to teach virtual classes. And that's really kind of a no-brainer. And I think the school district is going to have to relent on that one. And so I expect, that they'll figure that out here pretty soon as they get everything together in terms of reopening. What I found interesting is as you guys were doing the round robin there and everything, is that it kind of reminded me of just how much school districts seem to be flying by the seat of their pants on this whole darn thing, and really just trying to figure it out as they go along. And a lot of the solutions that we are talking about here and everything, it kind of depends on where you live and where you are, what the preference of the parents there and everything. Because I think in our survey, we had like 60% of the parents or something like that wanted the kids to go back to school as well. But the parents, the other 40%, the parents who are concerned, are also very vocal, about the health of the kids, as well as the teachers. And because, as especially you guys who had kids and who have kids in school, that your kids can develop a very close relationship with their teachers, and through them, the parents. And the parents tend to end up caring a great deal about these teachers. I know we did when our daughters were in school. We tended to have pretty good relationships with their teachers purposely and everything. So the parents actually care about the health of these teachers too, and don't want to see anything happen to them. But I think what we've kind of outlined here so far is that it's a very difficult situation. I think as Brent or Gil said, that it's an extremely tough choice. We do have our children school serves a number of purposes for our kids other than just education. It's socialization. It's that one-on-one contact. It's all of that stuff. And even though we don't really value them enough, usually that way, it's all of that stuff. And the more they miss out on that, the more they are hurt by that, but we have to weigh that with being in the middle of a global pandemic. Let's be honest, it's killing people. And it's going to be very difficult going forward. But I think the school districts are moving in the right direction by trying to reopen schools safely, and then after that, managing, the small outbreaks here and there as Gil was describing up in Martin County and other places, in St. Lucie County particularly, and other places, and managing those as best you can. I think I had heard that in Brevard Elementary, the whole school closed down or something like that.
It was the whole, yes, correct. It was an entire school closed, and
wow.
I have the article pulled up here. And many students and staff are in quarantine after positive cases of COVID-19 were reported on campuses. And we started school, brick-and-mortar schools, on the 24th. So
right.
It's a week and a couple of days. So
well, can you imagine being one of the parents of one of those probably somewhere around 1,800 kids, being the parents of one of those, and suddenly, oh crap, my kid's not in school anymore. What am I going to do here? About work. So this. And
then do you quarantine as a parent? If you're a parent who needs to go out to work and you've been in contact, obviously, with your child, do you call your job and say, I'm not coming to the office or to wherever I work for 2 weeks? That's such a, I always say I would never run for the school board because it is the toughest job on earth and they barely make any money. So I really appreciate people who do that type of work. It is a thankless job. But also, Rick, I'm hearing there's a lot of engagement going on the Palm Beach Post Facebook page. Parents, send us your questions. Also, give us your experience with your children. Are you sending them back to school? Are you keeping them at home? If you have sent them back, how has it been? If you're keeping them at home, is it better than it was in the spring? I really want to hear that, because in the spring, the online learning was put together very quickly, and I don't think anybody was happy with that. The promise was that in the fall, that it would be a lot better with the e-learning option and kids being virtually in the classroom with the teacher. I know a 13-year-old who's not enjoying it. She says her teacher mutes her accidentally. She will mute her because she's talking to other students and then forgets to unmute herself. And so she's muted for the whole class, and she's sitting at home and she has nothing to do. It's a lot on teachers to ask them to teach a class in person and then do the virtual class and then take questions from your physical classroom and then questions from your virtual classroom. It is a lot. And Gil, I know you have an 8th grader. Is it better for at least for your child?
No, I mean, I'd seen a story earlier today, and this was about what happened in the spring. And as you noted in the spring, everybody had to sort of pull it out of thin air. Everybody was making it up. Assembling the airplane as they were flying it was the term I heard used. There was a study by the Urban Education Institute at the University of Texas at San Antonio. They polled 2,000 public school students and parents whose education was shifted online after the pandemic hit. 64% of the students and parents said they felt students learned less online than they learned in the classroom. Now, again, as you just said, the promise was that, we're going to retool this for the fall, the education we're going to offer, the remote learning. We've even changed the terminology. It was distance learning in the spring. It's remote learning now. And the promise was it was going to be more robust. It was going to be more planned out and thought out. In talking to my daughter and in talking to other parents whose kids have been doing it online, there's still a feeling that it's not the same thing as being in the classroom. Now, let's say that being in the classroom is not the same as it was, prior to all this happened. You've got, my son, my 5th grade son's in a classroom. He's got 7 or 8 other kids in the classroom. The rest of the kids in his class are all doing it online. The teacher's at her desk. She's not up walking around, leaning over the student's shoulders like teachers, have done for millennia. The need to keep social distance is there. So the teachers aren't interacting with the students in the classroom the same way they were. But he finds it beneficial to have the teacher up front, commanding his attention. When we were doing the online learning in the spring, it was too easy for the attention to wander. It was too easy to shift away from what you're supposed to be paying attention to and start doing something else. We've heard, stories of, the kids are all supposed to have their cameras on their laptops or their Chromebooks so the teachers can see them. Some do, some don't. How much, if the kid's at home and doesn't have a parent sort of hanging over him or her, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, making sure they're logging on every day, the opportunity for the mind to just sort of wander and for the not paying attention to the schoolwork is there. Whereas it's much, easier to stay focused within the classroom where the teacher can kind of notice that you're not focused, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, it's hard for adults too. Everybody knows working from home is like, it works for some people and they thrive. Like I've gotten used to it at this point, but some people it just doesn't work for him. And I think for children specifically, I think the differences are even more difficult to handle for kids. But Rick, I mean, you guys in Palm Beach County, you're doing online only for at least the beginning. I mean, what is your understanding of what the district is doing to make sure that online learning this time is better, given that they're putting out their chips in that type of learning?
Well, I mean, they've enhanced as much as they can the technology. Now, I will admit, on the first day we had some serious issues. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but we had some major glitches where people couldn't access the system. They had to do offer up some kind of workaround or something like that. So it was bumpy the first couple of days and smoothed out a little bit more today, and I think it'll get better. But I think that the other issue that we're running into, and along with a lot of other school districts around the country, is how this pandemic really has kind of exposed our digital divide in our school district. This is something we've been wrestling with for a while now, where you have kids who don't have laptops or Chromebooks or anything like that. And even if they did, they don't have access to the internet in their homes. So that's one of the things that they're trying to deal with now. I mean, we've actually, the district has purchased, several thousand Chromebooks and stuff to give to students, but they need even more and everything if they're going to continue with the virtual learning. I think one of the things we're hoping for is that when we do open up more to brick and mortar classrooms, it will take a good deal of that pressure off, but it's still an issue. As we just pointed out, if you shut down an entire elementary school, and only half the kids in this, or say a third of the kids in the school don't have proper internet access to do virtual learning, you suddenly have a major problem. And everything. So they're still going to have to deal with that going forward, I think. And I don't think that's a unique issue in Palm Beach County. I think that's an issue in every school district in the country. As I was mentioning before we started our broadcast, I was listening to a story this morning on CBS News about some kids, poorer kids in a certain district that were actually sitting outside a Starbucks to use their Wi-Fi so that they could do their virtual learning because they don't have that in their homes. So this is it can end up being a pretty serious issue that the districts will just have to deal with, and I think they can.
Yeah, and we do have a question from Facebook, and Brent, if you want to take this one. Shouldn't all schools take their time by reopening? Why use our kids as test subjects? Why? Question mark. Brent, do you want to give it a try?
That goes to my earlier answer. This person seems to is insinuating or profiting that putting kids in schools is using it as test subjects on the spread of COVID. And there may be an element of truth to that. But if you don't send the kids back to school, if you don't reopen the schools, you're using your kids as test subjects and experiment on what happens when you don't have education, when kids who need the classroom experience don't get it. You're using society as a test subject on what happens when parents lose jobs and lose health insurance and miss doctor's appointments and miss preventative treatments down the road, or their health issues down the road that we miss, or we running a test on that by not having schools open. So I acknowledge it's a difficult balancing act, and I don't pretend that I know the answers completely, but I don't believe that we can keep schools closed indefinitely under the system that we had going since March and May, where either there was no school or the school was strictly online. Yeah, I don't see it that way. I see schools as an essential service. Are we using grocery store workers as test subjects when they have to go back to work and stock the shelf and man the cash registers? Maybe in a way we are, because they're exposed to the virus that way. But it's an essential service, and in my view, education is an essential service. So it has to fall into that realm. The virus is inherently unfair. It's an unfair situation for everyone. It's an unfair situation for teachers who have to make that difficult choice to go back to the classroom or not. But it's not a fair virus.
Actually, in Martin County, the district labeled teachers essential workers, and that caused sort of a great deal of consternation here. But I take Brent's point. I mean, I think, who's more essential to the ultimate success of our society than teachers? And I know a lot of teachers don't want to hear that, and I understand their fears. And if I was a teacher, frankly, I'd be frightened to go back in the classroom too. I totally understand that. At the same time, though, what service, if you want to call it that, is more vital than education? I had some back in the spring when everyone was just suddenly shifted to online education. I had someone say to me, "Did you ever wonder how many 9-year-old kids are sitting at home alone in their houses right now because mom and dad had to go to work, and they're at home doing online education?" But to Rick's point earlier about we already have existing disparities in education, based on socioeconomic status. Depending on where you live, your school may have fewer resources than schools that serve maybe wealthier communities, that sort of thing. One of the real risks of this pandemic and our response to it is that it's ultimately going to widen those socioeconomic gulfs. Again, exactly what Rick said, when you have kids who don't have access to the technology, when you have kids who don't have the laptops, when you have kids who don't have the internet access, when you have kids who don't have parents home to help them. That's one of the things when you have a kid doing the online distance learning or remote learning or whatever we're calling it, they sometimes get stuck. They sometimes get jammed. The teacher can help to a certain extent online, from afar, but often it takes a parent there to look over the child's shoulder and point something out. Or if there is a question, to text the teacher, which I do all the time. My son's teacher's getting sick of me, but where's the homework posted today? Which of the programs does he need to use for this? If a kid doesn't have a parent home to be able to do that, they're sort of the children themselves are flying blind. I understand, the fear of a lot of people, not just teachers, but parents who say, again, as our commenter did, well, this is a big experiment. Yes, but by the same token, again, if you have kids whose education suffers on the basis of the fact they have to stay home, not everyone can work from home. Not everyone has a flexible work schedule. I find that a lot of the people who say, why don't the kids just stay home, have the flexibility. To use the term of the moment, they have the privilege of staying home and being with their kids. It's not a problem for them. It's a huge problem for a lot of people. So.
It is. And we're about to wrap up, but I want to read one last question. This one is coming from Naples. Whoever wants to take it, go ahead. How is it fair for both students doing online learning and those in the classroom when the teacher is not devoting their attention to both equally? I don't think it's fair. I don't think there is an easy solution to this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the teacher. It's not fair to the students.
As Brent said, the virus isn't fair.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about me. It doesn't care about what teachers. It doesn't care. It's the virus. And it's just unfair, and we just have to deal with it the best way we can. I think that the teacher obviously is in the situation where they just have to do the best they can. And if a parent decides that they don't want their child to be in a classroom and rather do virtual learning, then the parent has made that choice about whether or not what they want to sacrifice in terms of fairness. And that's what they have to deal with. I just don't think that, that we can sit here and be concerned too much about what's fair when we're dealing with this virus. I think it's a matter of, we just worry about doing the best that we can as safely as we can for as many people as we can. and realize that just not everybody is going to get everything the way they want it, you know, and that we try not to overlook the concerns that anyone might have. You know, I mean, it's I think you know, another running joke is, you know, what day is it? You know, is it still the 12th? It was the 12th, you know, 2 days ago or 4 days ago. I mean, these days just keep running on and on and on, and the virus is in this pandemic is exhausting. But fair is not a word that I have actually even thought about very much in terms of commenting on this. I really haven't.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I think this is it. We've been going for 36 minutes. So I want to thank you all for joining our first Florida Pulse live stream. And thank you for sharing your opinions with us and the viewers. And the viewers, thank you for watching us. We will be back next month with a new topic. If you have any suggestions for topics or any Florida newsmakers that you would like us to try to get an interview with, shoot for the stars. Maybe it's the governor, maybe it's somebody else. Give us your suggestions. We'll do our best to try to get them here. It is our job to do that. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next month. Thank you, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.